going to take a couple seconds here to let people fill in the stream, and then we'll get started with the Progressive Unity Summit with Jamal Bowman and organizers from the Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren campaign. So we'll just get started in a couple seconds here. Okay, we are up on Twitter and Facebook and looks like YouTube as well. We don't have the TikTok live streaming capability yet, but we will reach the Zoomers soon. I'm here, well, first I'm Waleed Shahid. I'm the Communications Director of Justice Democrats, and this is the Progressive Unity Summit with Jamal Bowman, who is running for Congress in New York 16th District. And we're joined with organizers from the Bernie Sanders and Elizabeth Warren presidential campaign. So I'll go around and do some introductions. First, I'll start with Claire Sandberg, who has been involved in organizing and social movements for many years. And most recently, she served as National Organizing Director for Bernie 2020. Hi, Claire. We also have Kimon Felix, who is the Surrogates and Strategic Communication Director for Elizabeth Warren 2020. Felix is a seasoned political communication strategist who leads the Blue State Strategic Communications practice in Washington, D.C. For almost a decade, Felix has designed communications and branding strategies for progressive candidates, clients, and campaigns. Prior to joining the Blue State, Felix was the National Director of Surrogates Communication, Black Media, and Strategic Communication for Elizabeth Warren's 2020 campaign for president. And in addition to being a strategist, Felix is also a poet and author, and her debut collection of poems, Build Yourself a Boat, was published by Haymarket Books in 2019 and was longlisted for the 2020 National Book Awards, PEN America Open Book Award, and Lambda Literary Award. Everyone can say hello to Kimon. We have Helen Brosnan, who is the Regional Political Director for Elizabeth Warren 2020. Helen is a political organizer and activist. Most recently, she was the Regional Political Director for Elizabeth Warren's presidential campaign, primarily overseeing Northeast states and Senator Warren's down-ballot endorsements. Before that, she organized immigration campaigns and direct actions for the National Domestic Workers Alliance, fought for Medicare for All with Addie Barkan's Be a Hero campaign, and helped elect progressive women or helped progressive women run for local office. Hi, Helen. And we also have Theo Oshiro, who is the Deputy Director for Make the Road. Oshiro is a lead health policy expert, a Peruvian immigrant raised in Queens, and has been recognized several times for his contributions to immigrant communities, winning the New York Lawyers for the Public Interest Felix A. Fishman Award. Oshiro was appointed by Mayor de Blasio and Governor Cuomo to serve on city and state level policy task forces focused on immigrant health and health disparities. Oshiro has been a leader in improving language access policies in New York City and state, and led advocacy that resulted in the passage of city level law and the state level Safe RX legislation to require comprehensive interpretation and translation services to limited English proficient patients at chain and mail order pharmacies. Thank you, Theo, for all your work. And then we have Jamal Bowman, who is the outreach director for the Michael Bloomberg 2020 campaign. Just kidding, everyone. Jamal Bowman was most recently the founding principal of the Cornerstone Academy for Social Action, a public middle school located in the Baychester neighborhood of the Bronx. CASA is an innovative public school with a strong emphasis on student voice, holistic education, cultural awareness, and love. You may know him more from his campaign where he is challenging Representative Eliot Engel in New York 16th District in Westchester and the Bronx. Welcome, Jamal Bowman.
Thank you.
Cool. So we'll kick this off with a question for first Claire and Theo. You two worked on the Bernie Sanders campaign. Claire, you were the organizing director, and Theo, your organization played a major role in being one of the first Latino and immigrant organizations to endorse Senator Sanders. Why should Bernie supporters be making a major investment in donating, phone banking, getting involved with Jamal Bowman's campaign? I think, Theo, we're going to start with you.
Thanks so much, Waleed. And I first just want to say how honored I am to be in this space with Jamal and all of you. I met Jamal some time ago, and he is such an inspiring person. And you can't, everyone that I know that walks away from one conversation with Jamal and hears his vision for our country, for our district, just comes away super inspired and energized and hopeful for the future. So I'm so happy to be here. I'm so honored to be here in support of Jamal. You know, at Make the Road Action, our members are low income people of color, immigrant communities. We have a center right in Westchester County where a lot of our folks, you know, live in District 16. And we supported Bernie because he had a bold platform in the race fighting for racial, economic, and immigrant justice. He stood with us on various issues from citizenship for all to dismantling ICE, right, Immigration and Customs Enforcement. He stood with us to protect workers. He stood with us to ensure affordable housing and good housing for all. And he stood with us on the school to prison pipeline and ending the school to prison pipeline and many other issues. And Jamal stands with us on those very same things. He sees really the reality that our communities are facing and all of the underlying issues that we face, structural racism, the criminalization of our communities. And you know, he supports the real policy solutions and changes that our communities need. He really is the movement candidate. He's, I think, the most exciting candidate running for office right now. And so that's why we encourage folks that you know, our members feel that, you know, having supported Bernie and supporting Jamal on all of the same issues that we know he's got our backs on. And yeah, we feel very, very energized to fight on behalf of Jamal. And I know that that our members feel extremely energized to get out there and make sure that folks are voting for Jamal for District 16.
Go ahead.
I want to agree with what Theo said, and also say that I think a big reason why I am so excited to support Jamal is, well, I'll name two things. One, Engel is terrible on many different issues. And I'll be very blunt about that, so that others don't have to. But it's really shameful that in a deep blue seat in a district that has so many urgent needs, that the representative is someone who's beholden to corporate interests and whose main legislative focus is advancing a destructive foreign policy agenda. And one of the things that was most important to me in backing Bernie was his bravery on standing up to the war machine and his leadership in opposing the war in Yemen and saying that we need to have conditions on aid to Israel and have a foreign policy that is first and foremost advancing peace and human rights. And so it's so powerful to see a candidate like Jamal backing many of those same policies and taking those honestly very brave positions where we don't have enough Democrats who are really showing leadership in that arena. And so in addition to just seeing Jamal's suite of really strong domestic policies and big progressive vision around education and Medicare for all and a Green New Deal, I'm really thankful that he is running and taking on someone who is so bad on an issue that's really important. And then the other thing I would just say is that he's also just separately from the contrast with Engel, he's the kind of leader who doesn't really come along every day. Someone who has a track record of leadership in the community, who's deeply embedded in the community. And I think right now, when you look at what's happening in Congress with the Republicans dictating the terms of the debate, and we've now had 4 bills pass the Senate and it's going to the House that have not done enough and delivered for working people, we see how important it is to have elected leaders who are going to keep fighting even when the screws are put to them, and are going to not back down and know who sent them there and are really going to be beholden to their constituents and are not going to stop fighting for what's actually necessary.
Thanks, Claire. And I'm going to ask the same question to the Warren staffers on the call. Why should Warren supporters be making a major investment in donating, phone banking, getting involved with Jamal Bowman's campaign? I don't know which one of you wants to start, but.
I'm going to go first. Hi, everyone. I'm Kimon Felix. I'm formerly National Director of Surrogates Communications, Black Media, and Strategic Communications on the Warren campaign. Where to even begin? Helen is going to hop in a second. We'll probably cut each other off a lot. I'm really sorry about it in advance. On the Elizabeth Warren, first of all, I want to say one thing. One, I've been supporting Jamal before I joined the Warren campaign. So it feels important for me to just like a little asterisk. But also why it's important for Warren supporters and other Warren staffers to support Jamal and help organize everything that Elizabeth Warren, all of the work that she has done over the last decade has been about fighting righteous fights, has been about putting power in the hands of people who are being left out, and about looking at the landscape, looking at the structures in place, and really analyzing whether or not the structures are benefiting people of color, immigrant communities, communities that have experienced incarceration, Black and Brown communities. And a big part of our strategy on the campaign was to make sure that even while we were running this really dynamic national campaign, that we had our pulse on the rest of the country and that we were looking at other candidates and other movements in places that are maybe outside of the scope of the national campaign, but making sure that we are championing Democrats who can help flip the Senate and can make sure that we also have a really strong House and make sure that we are championing the issues that we want our candidates to win on in the future. So yeah, progressives didn't win this, didn't win the presidency, and we didn't win the presidential fight, but we did win on a lot of the issues, and we need to make sure that we continue championing those issues. So in 4 years, when we do put another candidate up, we'll have the kind of landscape where they can succeed. And I'll let Helen hop in too.
Yeah, thank you, Cam. Thanks, everyone. And just thank you to all of you for convening this. And it feels really good to be among all of you in many ways and in this movement together, especially for Jamal, who's like the great unifier. So just thank you and excited. And, you know, it's hard to add on to what Cam said and what the amazing Bernie folks said as well. I would just add that, you know, I think Senator Warren knows as good as anyone that a lot of the structural change and the revolution she was trying to bring about in many ways can't happen just at the national level. And it really does need to be implemented from the local state level up. And so, you know, just from a pure strategic level, like the chance to support a revolutionary, amazing candidate like Jamal at a more local level only makes sense for the sorts of national agenda items that our movement collectively is trying to put together. So not only is it logical, it's exciting. And also just, I think Claire said this as well, like the reason I worked for Senator Warren is because I felt like she was a once in a lifetime candidate and she made me get up every day and made me feel proud. And Jamal far and away is the person I felt the closest to in that way, also before the campaign, but during the campaign. And just, you know, excited to in every way to support him and encourage literally every single Warren volunteer, staffer, supporter to do the same, because it's honestly the only way we're going to achieve the agenda we all worked and that all the amazing Bernie staffers work day in, day out to achieve. And just the last thing I'll say too is that I know this is true for all of us, you know, so much of what we all have talked about and what we've all spent much of our work even before these campaigns talking about, and what our two candidates talked about is, you know, not me, us, and uprooting structural change that's much bigger than us, and that's much bigger than one individual person. And so I can't think of a better way to channel that than to support an amazing revolutionary candidate like Jamal.
Thanks so much. And Jamal, I'm going to pass it to you with the question of, you know, how does it feel to have all these great organizers, staffers from these like amazing presidential campaigns, historic presidential campaigns, backing you in this race?
Yeah, thank you all for sharing your thoughts, and it's incredibly humbling. It's incredibly exciting. I'm a huge fan and always been a huge fan of Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders. I felt like, you know, I was being pulled in two directions when they both were running, because it was like, you know, I couldn't retweet certain things with one person without making the others upset. But they both stand for what I stand for, and they both represent, you know, all that I've been about for my entire life. I think they were both very clear, as I've always tried to be clear, that America is rooted in institutional racism, institutional sexism, institutional classism. This country gave birth to those things, and those things still exist within every infrastructure of this country. And both Elizabeth Warren and Bernie Sanders had policy that were targeting the underbelly of that institutional oppression. And that's something that I've always been about, and that's something that I experience in education. When I started teaching in 1999, you immediately saw the inequality within the education system. Our schools are underfunded, they are under-resourced, class sizes are too big. And then every year, the state would give these standardized tests and judge students based on how they performed on those tests without giving the resources. And every year, the test results told the same story. They told us that English language learners are underperforming, students with special needs are underperforming, Black and brown students are underperforming, and economically disadvantaged students are underperforming. They told us that story each and every year, yet they never did anything about it. They never provided the additional resources that schools and teachers needed to support children and families. And the reason why they didn't provide those resources, because they wouldn't make sure the wealthiest among us paid their fair share of taxes so that we can then support our schools as well as our communities. So you saw the institutional discrimination happening in education. And after being in the school system for 8 years and seeing all of this play out, we tried our best to organize parents, teachers, and students. We wrote a proposal for a new school, and we opened up a new school in 2009. And that school did great work in terms of pushing back against the system that we felt was oppressive, but it wasn't enough. Students can't thrive in school when they're dealing with food insecurity, housing insecurity, lack of health care, growing up in an environment where you're 3 times more likely to die of asthma than anywhere else in the country. When you look at this district, there are pockets of the district where the poverty rate is as high as 20, 25, 30%. We need 70,000 affordable homes right now in this district. We have 4 NYCHA developments that haven't received a dime from the federal government in over 10 years. And Elliot Engel has been in office 31 years, and he hasn't been a fighter or a leader or a coalition builder on any of these issues. And that's something that I've tried to do throughout my career in education as a teacher, as a guidance counselor, and as a founding principal of our school. So this is super humbling, super exciting. There's so much work to do. And this is much less about Elliot Engel as a person than it is about what he represents. He represents a status quo that continues to be oppressive toward those who are most marginalized in our communities. And he may not even be aware that he represents that status quo. But as we've canvassed the district and done the work from the very beginning, we realize that he represents 7% of the district very, very well. It's the other 93% that he hasn't been there for, that he hasn't supported, that he hasn't listened to. And when you look at his voting record, he voted for the war in Iraq. He voted against Obama's Iran deal, one of the few Democrats to do so. He voted for No Child Left Behind. He voted to repeal Glass-Steagall. He voted for a crime bill that is still impacting the lives of Black and brown children and families in this district today, and that was done in 1994. He voted to allow the sale of cluster bombs to Saudi Arabia, which they then used to bomb Yemen into the famine that it currently exists in. He continues to take money from corporate PACs and big donors. We raised more money from small donors in the first 2 weeks than he did all last cycle, because he hasn't connected with the grassroots and he hasn't built the movement that needed to be built in this deep blue district throughout his career. So I'm excited. We have a tremendous opportunity, not just to beat Engel and not just to push forward progressive policies like a Green New Deal, like Medicare for all, like economic equality, through ensuring that the wealthy pay their fair share of taxes. But what I'm most excited about is connecting with those who have been historically marginalized and disenfranchised and bringing them into the conversation. They finally see a candidate that's viable, that they can get excited about, someone who speaks their language, someone who understands their pain and what they go through on a day-to-day basis. That's what I'm more excited about, growing our democracy. And if we continue to grow this democracy, we will not only beat Engel, we'll continue to get the right people into Congress, into the White House, and into state and local races as well. So this is exciting. Thank you all for being here. Let's go get this done.
Thanks so much, Jamal. And I know there's a few folks who have experience directly in the district in New York 16. And I was just wondering whether you've lived there, whether you currently live there, whether you've done work in the district. With the district being such a center of crisis because of the pandemic and because of the health and economic crisis related to that, why do you think someone like Jamal would be a better representative and leader in this moment than Eliot Engel? And what are some of the issues you're already seeing play out in the district, maybe even before coronavirus, that you think Jamal could be better speaking to? So anyone who wants to jump in.
Sure. Yeah, I was just speaking earlier to one of our community members who lives in Yonkers here in Westchester County, and who had a family member pass away from the coronavirus, and he was the primary breadwinner of her household, and none of her family members have access to health insurance or health care. And it really illuminated to me, right, that they were very low income before coronavirus. They didn't have health insurance and haven't had it for a very long time. And what the pandemic has done is really just highlighted and made more visible these root injustices and issues that have been around for a very long time. The thing about Jamal is that he's been fighting for the things that we need now in the pandemic, way before the pandemic, right? And talking about the issues that are really salient right now: the need for safe and affordable housing, the need for healthcare for all, right? Not anyone being left out of being able to access healthcare. And really seeing healthcare as a human right. The fact that everyone, immigrant communities, non-immigrant communities, should be part of the recovery, given that we're all contributing to what we need to do into the future in the context of coronavirus. So for us, we know that it is time to elect someone like Jamal who knows and has been so connected to the issues for such a long time, and has been calling for these solutions, way before this pandemic hit, and is really the kind of leadership we need. Leadership that understands the right solutions and really understands them as a result of speaking to real community members that are facing real issues. I can't think of a better person than a principal of a school, right, who needs to figure out real solutions that students are facing, and needs to talk to parents and students and staff, teachers, to come up with those solutions. So that practical leadership and visionary leadership is exactly what we need to be able to recover from the pandemic, but really to move forward in a lot of these root issues that we've been seeing for a long time.
Waleed, can I jump in real quick?
Yep.
Yeah, no, it's funny what Theo just mentioned. My entire job as a principal is constituent services. I have to meet the needs of the children, teachers, and families in my school. And that's even after a mother comes in and curses me out for something I did to her son or daughter the day before. Even when that happens, I still have to work with that parent. I can't discard them or marginalize them. It's a collaborative effort in meeting the needs of everyone within the community. And, in terms of what Theo mentioned about, calling for healthcare and healthcare for all prior to the pandemic, that's something we were doing prior to running for office. not only did we open up a school in the North Bronx within the district, but we partnered with Montefiore Medical Center to build a healthcare extension to the school that's going to be breaking ground June 2020. So it's that kind of just collaborative leadership and always looking for solutions to the problems that your students and families are facing. That's not something that was instituted or implemented by the Department of Education. That's something me and my teachers identified as a need within the community. We reached out, made the connection, built a partnership, and now a healthcare center will be built as an attachment to the school that I founded in 2009, which is something that I'm just as proud of, as opening a school 10 and a half years ago.
Yeah, I want to hop in too. I mean, a couple of things I want to say. I grew up in the district. I went to school in the district. I also went to school one district over. Eliot Engel has been in office for longer than I have been alive, which means that all of the negative experiences in my development as a young person in my district can be traced back to decisions he did or did not make. That's from No Child Left Behind to the crime bill to war in Iraq. I went to 3 different high schools while I was in the district. And by the time I did graduate high school, was unprepared to be able to apply to college. The reality is that not only does every child deserve a real education, but every community and every family deserves to be represented by a person who not only sees their inherent value, but is genuinely interested in showing that value back to the young people in their community and giving them the opportunity to see themselves in their theory of change. When I was a young person, not a single elected official who ran for office or was already elected in my district showed up at my school, showed up at my home. I never had any interaction with them. I couldn't begin to know, I didn't even know what their name was up until maybe 5 or 6 years ago. It matters for young people, especially in our district, to see representation that reminds them of their family. And the reason why that matters is because for so long, all of the interactions that we've had with authority figures have taught us to be afraid of anyone who comes into our community and says that they want to help us. So it matters when someone who runs for office reminds us of our favorite teacher or our favorite principal or the uncle who took an extra 2 hours out of his day to do a little bit of homework practice because your mom couldn't get there. I know that if there was someone running for office when I was a young person who made me feel the way some of my teachers made me feel by seeing them on television or hearing what they're saying in the community, not only would I have found my way into civic life a lot sooner, but I might have done a lot better just by feeling like there was someone in some office that I could call and say, hey, I had a bad interaction with a cop the other day. Even if no one gave me a call back, the feeling that there could be someone who would care and would want to listen matters. And the reality is that education is not just about opportunity, it's about humanity. And so teachers, good principals who are essentially good organizers understand that creating good schools means that we have to create environments where good schools thrive. And that means environments that get the funding they deserve. That means environments that are not over-policed. That means environments where young people have access to the food and the nourishment that allows them to think critically and actually be able to engage with their future. At the end of the day, nothing that we're doing right now matters if when we look back in 10 years, we can't see this impact on the landscape. I want to be able to go back home. I want to go back to the Bronx. I want to go back to the district. I want to raise my children there. But I can't go back unless I feel like what I'm bringing my children back to is something better than what I got. And I'm here and fighting for Jamal as someone coming from this district because I believe that he makes me feel hopeful that there will be an opportunity for me to go home and have the same kind of quality of life that I would have in Washington, D.C. or on the Upper East Side. And one other thing I want to mention, Helen and I talk about this a lot, and she'll weigh in here too. You know, Helen and I grew up in the same district, but Helen and I had drastically different upbringings. The governor often talks about how it's the tale of two cities in New York State, right? But that's true in every district. It's the tale of two districts in every district. On one side of the district, someone has better access to food and school, and on the other side of the district, someone doesn't. Right now, in the middle of this pandemic, there are people who are getting up and going to work every single day because they have to, because they don't have a choice. And that has made the Bronx the epicenter of this virus. But on the other side of the district, those people are not getting sick. Those people can stay home. Those people have the connectivity, the bandwidth, right, to be able to continue and do their work. But my mom can't do that. My uncle, who just died a couple of days ago, who was a frontline worker, a man who lived in Yonkers, who dedicated his whole life to socialist and communist movements, could not be protected. It's not okay for us to keep building movements that aren't sustainable. We need to be able to look back and make sure that the work that we're putting in actually breaks ground and is strategically viable. And that's why I'm supporting Jamal. I'll let Helen talk now.
Yeah, no, I mean, thank you. Thanks both of you for sharing your stories too. I'll just add one thing, because I grew up in a couple miles from Cam and had a vast experience in my middle school, right? Like a completely different experience. And, you know, I looked up Elliot Engel's FEC filings, and like a bunch of his donors are from this district. And there's a reason that, or from this part of the district rather, that I grew up in. And, you know, there's a reason it gets the funding it wants. There's a reason this part of the district gets the attention it wants. And there's a reason that a couple miles from this part of the district, there are people literally walking into a fire right now, and mass graves and mass deaths. And that's not getting the attention. And obviously we all know that that's not right. And we know that that's just an inhumane and frankly, evil thing that we have allowed to fester under someone who's been in Congress for so long, that we can have two realities of a city and of America take place literally, I mean, truly a couple miles from each other. You know, and it's, so I think the choice is clear at this point, especially in this crisis, but, you know, like Cam just illustrated, this has been going on. These two realities have been going on forever. And this crisis is really just bringing it to a head that, like, you know, some people in this part of the district where I grew up have the choice to stay home, have the choice to stay safe, have the choice to work from home, have the choice to, you know, move around, see other family. And Jamal's the only one right now, as far as I'm concerned, who's fighting for the people that don't have that choice. You know, I saw him, I know this, and I know this as someone who cares about the well-being of my family and my colleagues and my neighbors. I know Jamal has been out with nurses in Yonkers, in the Bronx, literally making sure they're getting their PPE. And it is genuinely alarming and upsetting to feel like the person that represents you and represents your community, which is a lot different than Cam's community, which is a lot different than Jamal's community, than Theo's community. It is upsetting nonetheless for all of us that Elliot Ingalls has not been present. It's wrong. It genuinely is wrong. And it is a stain on him that we don't see him every single day trying to lead. And the only reason I feel hope when I see the death tolls rising in these parts of the district that we're talking about is because of Jamal and the thought that in just a couple months' time, he could be leading for us, and he could be leading a district that, you know, cares about every single person and cares about, you know, really like the physical lives and bodies of every single person that lives in this district, not just people that live where my parents are and where I grew up. And, you know, that really is one of the few things that fills me with genuine hope in an otherwise moment of terror. And I think that's just worth pointing out too about Jamal generally versus Elliot is, you know, this is like, talk about revolutionary politics to lead with inclusion and kindness and say every single life matters, period. And I'm not going to stop at any less. I'm not going to go to the parts in the district just where I get my money from. I'm not, you know, and so if you want to talk about real progressive politics in this time, it's that, you know, no question, just willing to say, you know, I'm not going to stop at anything less than canceling rent and getting housing for every single person and healthcare for every single person, not 80%, not 70% of people, every single person that lives here, whatever zip code it was. And so, you know, it is unfathomable to me that Elliot Engel could say that he has been a leader in the epicenter of this virus right now, and truly having Jamal be supplanted in that leadership for him. We should all be, I feel grateful. I feel lucky that I see you and that you're out there. And I feel hopeful that that could be our reality for always and forever in a couple months' time.
Thanks so much. And I just wanted to remind folks that, this campaign is a grassroots powered campaign. Jamal isn't taking any corporate money, lobbyist money. That is a large percentage of where Elliot Engel receives his donations and what fuels his campaign. And I wanted to let everyone know that there was a YouTube commenter who said they just pledged to donate to Jamal, which someone described as the first useful YouTube comment in all of human history. But if you want to donate and chip in $3, $5, $20 to Jamal's campaign, go to bowmanforcongress.com. That's BOWMAN for congress.com, and you can click the donate link there. You can also sign up to volunteer if you are short of money. We need a bunch of phone bankers. This is changing every day, but the election could be decided way earlier than election day because there is so much that is in flux with mail-in balloting, early vote, absentee balloting. So we're going, driving forward into our operation as quickly as possible to reach as many voters as possible. I wanted to throw a question to Claire, which was that kind of related to some of the other questions, which, not only did we have great and phenomenal candidates running for the presidency this year, but we've seen that a couple of new voices that are progressives in the House, like the Squad, like people like Pramila Jayapal and Ro Khanna, like really can make a difference in pushing for the platform we see. And I wanted to remind folks that this district, New York 16, voted for Barack Obama and Hillary Clinton by 50 points over Romney and Trump, but Elliot Engel is not a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus. Claire, I just wanted your comment on what that means to you, and just kind of how you see Jamal relating to being a new progressive leader in this moment.
Yeah, well, I think one, it's very notable because the Congressional Progressive Caucus is already kind of a big tent institution. It's not, it has a lot of people in it who we wouldn't normally think of as especially progressive. They don't all have the politics of like this Squad. So it's really saying something that Engel doesn't even see a need to, and it doesn't, being a member of the CPC doesn't mean you can't be a part of other caucuses as well. So it's really saying something that he doesn't even feel the need to describe himself as a progressive in any way, which we know is an overused term that can become meaningless, but that he's not even paying lip service to it is, I think, pretty striking and very disappointing. And I think that, Cam said this, that if you've been in office for 31 years and you've presided over all of these crises, you're not going to be a person who is going to point out that the system has all of these fundamental flaws. And, support for Medicare for all is rapidly increasing right now because people are seeing that you can't deal with a pandemic and the economic crisis around the pandemic if you can't give people healthcare, and you can't give people healthcare if it's tied to people's jobs and everyone's becoming unemployed. And you can't get a pandemic under control if you're not also providing healthcare to the most marginalized people, to people who are undocumented, to people who are homeless, to people who are incarcerated. And that we can't actually address this crisis or the climate crisis unless we fundamentally challenge some of the systems that are driven by profit in this country, like the healthcare system, like the fossil fuel industry and the energy system. And we need to have progressive champions who are willing to look for bold solutions. And it's been really amazing to see the members of the Squad and Ro Khanna and Pramila Jayapal all put out some of the most innovative pieces of legislation that are actually on the scale of the crisis. And there's such a small number of representatives, but they're really punching above their weight when you see day after day, Jayapal is the one who is saying, hey, why aren't we doing what Denmark is doing? Let's just keep people on payroll. Then they won't all have to deal with this overburdened unemployment system where people in New York State are getting these debit cards that don't even work when they're trying to get direct deposits into their bank accounts. They can't get through to anyone. And why don't we just keep everyone on payroll? And Jayapal's putting that out. AOC's was the first one to stand up and say, no, this latest relief bill is not enough. It's insulting. And that takes political courage to do that. Ilhan Omar is calling for a national rent and mortgage freeze and keeping people in their homes. And having that small number of real champions is really shifting what's possible, and also holding the line, holding other Democrats accountable in ways that are very meaningful and really go beyond the size of the number of people we're actually talking about.
Yeah, I mean, it's common sense, and it's a politics rooted in love and compassion and empathy and humanity. And it's something that is just so basic that we should be able to provide. We constantly beat our chests and brag that we're the most powerful nation on earth and we're the wealthiest nation on earth, but we have millions of children and families living in poverty. And poverty not as a result of a poor work ethic. Immigrants, Black and brown communities work their butts off every day, 40 hours a week, overtime, etc., and they don't even earn health insurance. They don't have health insurance. They don't have paid leave. They don't have family leave. And this is happening in the so-called wealthiest nation on earth. It's a nation that's morally bankrupt. And the Squad and others are speaking truth to power, but their values are driven by our collective humanity and a common humanity. And the understanding that no child anywhere should die because they don't have health care. No one should die at a young age in a nation that's so wealthy. We should be able to take care of everyone and uplift everyone. And what brought me into this race, or what got me thinking about it, was during the 2017-2018 school year. 34 children died within the K-12 school system in the Bronx alone. And 17 of those children died via suicide. And anyone who looks at suicide knows it's connected to trauma, which is connected to poverty, which is connected to bad policy. And in our district during that time, one young girl, high school student, murdered another high school student at New Rochelle High School during that school year, right in this district. And another young girl, ninth grader in Co-op City, after being bullied in school, went to the top of a building in Co-op City and jumped off the building. And these are tragedies that people are living with every day because of the toxic stress and chronic trauma that people have to endure without leaders who are being champions for them and speaking for them and galvanizing them and fighting tooth and nail to bring all of the resources that we need into the communities most disenfranchised. And when you look at Westchester County, there's this saying, Westchester is the best Chester or something like that. When you look at the highest coronavirus rates in this district, they are in the Black and brown communities, mostly. Yonkers and Mount Vernon. New Rochelle is right there with them. Those are the top three in this district. And then you have the North Bronx also in the district in terms of per capita having the highest rates. Now, New Rochelle, because of its demographic, immediately got a response that was very urgent, right? Contained a particular area, bring in the National Guard, close the schools, bring food, let's help them out. Yonkers just got a testing site this week, despite being the leader in the number of cases throughout the county. Mount Vernon still doesn't have a testing site. Edenwald in this district is just getting a testing site this week. Why are the historically disenfranchised communities continuously left behind? And then we have elected officials who say things like, we need to do a study to understand why these communities are more impacted by the virus. If you are a state rep or a city council person or a governor or a mayor or a congressperson, and you don't understand how institutional racism and classism plays into our political arena, you should not be in office. And as I have said many times, Elliot Engel continues to not be and has never been a leader on these issues. And that's why new leadership is needed.
Just a reminder for folks, you can go to support bowmanforcongress.com. I'm saying this again because the first time I said it, many people donated, so I keep saying it. So people continue to support Jamal's campaign, and every donation counts, whether it's $3, $10, $27, whatever you can contribute is supportive. And you can also sign up at bowmanforcongress.com to volunteer. We have about 300 people watching this live stream across Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. I wanted to turn it to the people on this call who work the most on voter contact, and just wanted to ask you, for those who worked on voter contact directly during the presidential race, we've seen how powerful that can be for grassroots campaigns on the presidential level. How important is phone banking and voter contact for a low turnout district like this and a down ballot race? So anyone who wants to jump in can jump in.
I can jump in. I don't know if that question was for me, but I got to tell you, phone banking and just talking with voters is like the best part of my job. It's like the best thing to do, to just, ask the question, what matters most to you? What's going on in your life on a day-to-day basis, even prior to the pandemic? It's just so informative and so enlightening, and the voters appreciate it so much. So it's not just about a vote, it's about getting a better understanding of what's happening in the district, in all parts of the district, and then using that to make connections to really build the movement that we're trying to build here. So that's one thing I've noticed. I'll let other people jump in.
You go.
I can't tell if you're gonna jump in. No, you go for it.
I was just gonna say that I think that this is an example of a race that where talking to voters could be so powerful. You have a history of low turnout elections, 7% of people. Jamal said before that Elliot Engel is representing a small, very small sliver of the district, and most other people are unengaged. This is a period of time when people know that the government is not delivering for them. And he's been in office for 31 years, and we're in the middle of a complete crisis, and they know that Congress is not doing their job. And then also, you have really clear contrast between Jamal and Elliot Engel. And we talk a lot when we're talking about organizing in terms of getting people out to vote. And a lot of people think about talking to voters as just being about turnout, just making sure that supporters get out. But a lot of it in the Democratic primary is about persuasion, where you're saying to people who haven't been following politics closely, did you know what the differences were between these two candidates? And when you have a really clear contrast like this, I think that those conversations are probably very effective. And I plan on making some calls for Jamal this weekend. And I hope that a lot of you will join me and tell me how your calls are going, and I'll tweet about how some of my calls are going.
Yeah, I mean, I also want to hop in there too. Everything that Claire said, super thumbs up, completely agree. And I think one thing that's important to recognize right now, especially for the folks on this call, because of COVID, because of this shutdown, the tactics that we typically, or like just a couple of weeks ago, were able to rely on to get to voters, to be able to talk to them and like have fluid conversations, have been taken away from us, right? We can't knock doors the way that we used to before. Jamal can't just stand up in front of a room of community board members and say what needs to be said, right? So this is also a reminder that like community is everything, right? Especially when shit hits the fan, and shit has hit the fan. And there's nothing more important right now than all of us leaning in, finding ways to do the work that he would be doing if he could. And we all know that he would be out there knocking doors, and really, really doing the work that he's been doing for the last 20 years, right? So it feels really important that we recognize that the candidates that we care about are working at a deficit, and that we are their community ultimately, right? Because we're still introducing them to parts of the district, right? You can't expect people who have been completely unmotivated by elections that came before, who have been completely ignored by the candidates who came before them, to all of a sudden be all fired up for this election because we have a great candidate, right? It's going to take a lot more work. It's going to take all of us. And even though we have a great candidate, we're working against a history of a lack of engagement. And that's because when people don't feel seen and when they don't feel heard, they check out. And now is our job to now part of our job is to help people check in. And we don't have the tools that we had before. So we have to find new tools and get scrappy. But we can't assume that tweeting is enough, or that hashtags are enough, or even that donations are enough. We all have to be all hands on deck.
Anyone else want to jump in? Feel free.
Add one other quick thing, just in terms of this specific moment right now in New York in particular. I also think it's up to us and it's up to volunteers to explain what the stakes are right now too, right? That the only way people are fighting for their lives, they're worried about their own safety and staying alive tomorrow. And so having someone else being able to say, let me tell you what's at stake to Claire's point, between these two candidates, and how your life would be transformed versus what you're living under now. That's up to direct voter contact. Obviously, Jamal's an amazing spokesperson and the spokesperson for that, but he has a movement behind him, and that's the best tool we have, is to explain to people literally just how much their lives would transform if Jamal was representing them. And I think also that's exactly how we can beat this, and exactly how we can win what seems like and what has seemed like an unwinnable margin. That's how we make up the margin, is by getting people who feel like they are in this fight because their lives are at stake, and their livelihood is at stake. And that, having someone like Jamal, who is the first person to explain that what's happening in this district and what's happening during this crisis isn't a mistake. It was actually designed this way, and our systems were designed this way so that Black people would be dying at higher rates of a disease like this. And that includes you in the district. That's what we're getting across to people, and that's really how we can make up the difference in these final weeks. And so that's just something I want to underline, that's sort of up to all of us. And I'm saying this because I'm guilty and need to make more calls. So I am going to definitely do that this weekend. I'm going to make a bunch of calls. I'll compare notes with Theo and Cam and Claire and everyone. And I also definitely will be hopefully upping my monthly contribution, Bowman for Congress. I'm going to plug it again, bowman.org.
Thank you.
But I'm going to do those two things because I think, it's people's lives are at stake, and the way we communicate that is by talking to them directly, with heart and with empathy and with compassion. And I know you guys have been running an amazing, unusual, special, beautiful program in terms of just checking in with voters in the district. And there's a lot of other candidates who could take a page out of your book in doing that. So thank you first and foremost. But yeah, I'm gonna kick myself in the ass and make sure I do that this weekend too.
Thank you.
Thank you, Helen. I'm also just going to shout out, also, I updated my background for folks.
Oh my goodness.
So now I can.
Who is that guy?
Oh, there he is. Right
oh
there.
My goodness.
Hi, Jamal. I just wanted to shout out some people who donated in the past 15 minutes. I'm just going to say some first names. Thank you, Nicole, Irfan, Jenna, Mark, Fernando, Dave, Mallory, Bernadette, June, Ben, Keith. People are donating $5. Some people donating $50. Some people donating $250. This is really great. Thank you so much. We're super grateful. Bowmanforcongress.com. I'm glad that some of the things we've been talking about have spoken to you, and we have 5 minutes left on this call. So I just wanted to pass it back to Jamal, and other people can jump in to close us out with anything they want to plug, any pitch they want to make on behalf of Jamal, or anything we didn't get to today. So I'll start with Jamal.
Yeah, I just want to say, once again, thank you all for being a part of this call. Thank you all for your support. This is humbling. This is amazing. I didn't know what I was getting myself into when I decided to run for office, but it was kind of like jumping off a mountain and hoping you grow wings, and you all have become my wings. So thank you for that. And please send a note to Melissa Bowman as well, my wife, thanking her because she has been tremendous throughout this process. So please give her a shout out. You know, I don't want to be self-serving when I say this, but the presidential race was obviously and is obviously a very important race. I think beating Mitch McConnell and Lindsey Graham and others and flipping the Senate is also essential. But I think getting the right Democrats in office is just as important. And Elliot Engel represents a system and a status quo that we are all fighting against, and we're fighting with our hearts and soul to defeat. And if we're able to pull this out in this race with the support of all of you, it's a seismic paradigm shift for the entire country. Millions and tens of millions of immigrants, Black and Latinx people, students with disabilities, you name it, those who have been historically disenfranchised, tens of millions of them will begin to have hope and believe in a system and transformational change through our political system. And when that happens, we take our democracy back from the neoliberals, from the fascists, from those who've been trying to who have bought our democracy and have manipulated our politicians to doing their bidding. If we're able to win this race, we immediately take that back. It's a huge chink in the armor of that system that we're trying to defeat. So I want to encourage everyone to lean in as much as possible to help us bring this home. You know, this couldn't be done without the support of the Justice Democrats and many others. So I want to shout them out and thank them for their endorsement. And let's get to work. Let's get it done.
Thank you, Jamal. And anyone else who wants to jump in, we got a couple minutes here left, so feel free.
I just want to say that there is nothing more important right now than political imagination, and we need to identify the people who have the political imaginations that can take us into a better future and work like hell to make a world where their imagination was too tame and too pale for where we want to go. So donate for Jamal.
I would just add, you know, I start out by saying that Jamal, the moment I met him and you know, we spoke to our members, he inspired us so much about what was possible. We're going to be out there as well on the phones doing Spanish language stuff for the campaign too, just because we know that we got to reach every voter regardless of the language that folks speak. And really for us, it's just been super inspiring to see Jamal back us up and not only in this moment where, you know, unfortunately our federal government is leaving a lot of our immigrant communities out, but just for a long time, right? And talking about the issues that matter to us, that really impact us, and doing it in such a kind and loving way. He's got a really just a loving way about him that he communicates what's possible. An inspiring future with love and care. So thank you, Jamal. Thank you so much. And we will continue fighting for you. Thank you.
Theo said it better than I could have, but just thank you from the bottom of our hearts for making the sacrifice and running. And thank you to all of you on the call for all the movements you're building and working for. And collectively, this is an amazing group of people to be building a better future. So thank you, Jamal. And I'm praying and hoping and calling that we have you representing us really soon.
Yes, thank you so much, Jamal, for running. And running for office is just a huge leap of faith, and it's so much work. And I think that you would be an amazing candidate if you were running, even if you weren't taking on a long time incumbent, which just makes it so much more challenging. And I think we should all show up for you. And I'm gonna also increase my contribution. Actually, I don't think that my contribution disclosure, I don't think it was monthly, so I'm going to make it monthly. And I encourage everyone else to do the same.
Thank you so much, Claire, Helen, Kimon, and Theo and Jamal. Again, bowmanforcongress.com. There is a donate link up there. There's a volunteer link. Go out and support. This election is on June 23rd, but the votes will start pouring in before that because of all the absentee and mail-in votes. So it's really, the next couple of weeks are really critical. So again, thank you to all of our panelists. Thank you to our candidate, Jamal Bowman, and thank you for the 300 people who watched this tonight. Everyone stay safe out there. And again, thanks so much. Bye.
Bye. Thank you.
Thank you.